book there for a second, and a very warm welcome to Friday and the writing game. Delighted that you're able to join us here. Hopefully everything is working and we're all coming out in the right place. We've got a very exciting session for you today. We are going to be talking to Eoin Colfer, who is an author from Wexford, and he was a primary school teacher until the first Artemis Fowl book was published in 2001. His first book, Benny and Omar, was based on his experiences working in Tunisia as a teacher and translated into many languages, but it didn't have quite the same impact as the Artemis Fowl series, which was named the public favourite Puffin Modern Classic of all time, and has sold in excess of 25 million copies and been translated into 40 languages. There are 8 books in the whole series, alongside a whole range of companion books. And last year, a brand new spin-off series called the Fowl Twins was released, featuring Artemis's younger brothers, Myles and Beckett Fowl. And earlier this year, the movie came out straight to Disney Plus, and it was directed by Sir Kenneth Branagh and starring Dame Judy Dench, and Colin Farrell was in it too, and all sorts of names that you'll recognise. Definitely time to get the tuxedo out there. Eoin was also commissioned to write And Another Thing, the concluding episode of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, which became a worldwide bestseller. And he also writes crime novels, that is something I didn't know until earlier, featuring Irish bouncer Daniel McAvoy. He's written science fiction and picture books, including the award-winning Imaginary Fred with Oliver Jeffers, which is an amazing book. And earlier this year, High Fire, which was a fantasy novel for adults, was released, featuring a vodka-drinking, flash dance-loving dragon who has been hiding out from the world. So there is lots to talk to him about. Next week, Deny All Charges. I just love the title of that. The second book in the Fowl Twins series is being released. And so Mr. Trewin, Simon Trewin, is going to be talking to him about that. I'm going to bring them both in now, and we can get going. So let me bring in Mr. Trewin first. Just a quick count in. There we go. Hi, Simon. How are you? Is it nice to see you in London?
Very well. Yeah, really been looking forward to this all week. So
yeah. Let's bring in the man himself. Here we go.
As if by
Mr. Colfer.
Good morning.
Hello. How's it go? How are you?
We're all very well, thank you.
All good. I have to get myself out of here now. Give me 2 seconds.
I can't see Simon.
Can't you? Okay, that's a good start. Okay. We were doing so well there.
I know. We've been talking for 30 minutes.
Can you hear
me?
There
we go. I'll go and then see what happens. Okay.
Can you see me now? Can you hear me, Eoin?
Space.
Can you hear me?
Well, cheers, everyone. I don't know if anyone can.
You can hear me though, can you?
I can hear you. Can you
Excellent.
see Simon?
Okay, so Simon, do you want to jump out and come back in again?
I will do that. And
I'll just chat to Eoin. We do this, and everything works in all the tests. And then when we had Amit Dand here last week, we had like 10 minutes with no sound. I don't know what happened. So Simon will pop back in. If anything happens to you or you freeze during the process, just literally, do you remember how we came out and went back in again?
I will go
and yeah, and here we go. See, he's here now. Hopefully you'll be able to see him this time, and I can disappear. Where's he gone? My control panel.
We can just talk about your new book.
Probably very good. Oh dear, where's he gone? He didn't come in. Hang on a second. Now we've got all our guys coming in down the side. We've got a great crew who come and join us on a Friday.
Nice.
We've got people from Nova Scotia. Oh, there he is. I can hear you, Simon. I just need to find you on my control panel. Give me a second. We've got people from Nova Scotia. We've got Coleman is in Spain. I can't see you, Simon, on my control panel for reasons I'm not too sure about. Give me a second. Oh, there you go. Okay, bear with me.
Yes, success. There's a praying man there.
You can see me praying. That's very good.
Can you talk to each other now, and I'll just go.
Well, I can hear you, Simon.
Excellent.
I can hear you.
Progress.
Yeah. Can you go, Vanessa, unless it happens? There we go. Can you see me now?
There we go. I can.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. I mean, listening to Sam's introduction it's pretty exhausting, and we just have to listen to it. You've lived it and written it and done all of that. So the first question is, do you ever sleep? Because I'm not quite sure when you have time to.
I try and time my releases so it looks like I'm incredibly busy, and people ask me, but actually, when I was younger, I wrote a lot faster. I would write 2 books or 1 book every 9 months.
Right.
but now I do every 18 months. I've literally halved my production, but I suppose to boost it up a bit, I've started collaborating a lot more. And so I've worked with PJ Lynch, the wonderful PJ Lynch, with Andrew
Right. Yeah.
Duncan and Jude Regano on my graphic novels, on our graphic novels, with Oliver Jeffers, and with the composer Liam Bates. So I'm really starting to enjoy getting out of my own office and getting into someone else's space. Although COVID has, I suppose, put a halt to my gallop in that respect. But yeah, when you spend 30 years, and most of that 30 years is in an office alone,
Yeah.
it's when you get into your 50s to start spreading your wings a little bit creatively.
So do you find this, the fact you're now collaborating with other people, has that come out of a need to do that, or is it just sort of happenstance?
It is, I think, a need. I like to see, I'm a firm believer that if you're being creative with someone who is good at what they do, that just elevates the whole project. So if I do theater stuff, I love working with actors because they read your lines and then they make it 50% better with their own talents. And I find that absolutely amazing. I think musicians are like magicians, that they can just pluck melody from the air. I'm completely blown away by that. And then you work with people like Andrew Duncan, and we have a different slant. And when we come together, we create something that is probably better than either of us could do alone. So me, it's always all about the project. But as I grow older, what's crept in is I'm really, it's very important to me that the process is enjoyable. I don't want to, a lot of people like to create through conflict. And I'm not one of those people, not anymore. Maybe when I was younger, I enjoyed a good argy-bargy. But now I just want to marvel at what someone else is doing and saying to me and what we can create. So I really tend to gravitate towards people who are down to earth and very productive, and who are open to discussion, but they don't want an argument. So you find the people I keep going back to are people who are on those same pages. And I suppose I'm 55 now. I don't know. I would hope to have 10 more books in me, and I want to make that process as enjoyable as I can. But when I was younger, I was kind of ruthless, and I was going to write today, and I was going to get this done. And I think in a way you need to be like that when you're younger, to get established and to be prepared to go back and do the edits again and again, which I still am, by the way. But there's so many people trying to get on that publishing ladder that if you're going to take 3 or 4 days off a week to watch TV, it's just not going to happen. You have to put the time in with your bum on that seat, as they say.
Yeah. So those 10 books which you're going to write, no pressure, but do those stories do they have to make a stronger case for being 10% of your remaining output than they would have done before? Because when you're young, you're kind of going to live forever, aren't you? So you just write whatever you want.
Yeah, definitely. And at one point it would have been, I would have definitely had a space in my head for, is it going to be successful? Is this going to enable me to keep writing for a living? But now it's really, is this the best idea? Is this really the best I can do? I went through a period, I think, and I think a lot of artists, writers, and musicians especially go through a period where they're kind of not really impressed with their own work. They kind of think, is that what I want to be? Do I want to be that guy? And when I was finished the Artemis Fowl series, I started to think, well, maybe I should just win the Booker Prize, wouldn't I? I should stop writing about leprechauns, and I should start to do something, more serious, like a patriarch dying and the family coming home, from far-flung places, that. And then I realized, hold on a second, that is also a chestnut. And I came back around to appreciating my own. niche, if you like. And it really comforted me when I was reading about Bowie, who was my great hero,
Yeah.
that he went through that period where he didn't want to really know about Ziggy. He didn't want to know about any of the greatest hits. But then in the 90s, he came back around and he started doing a greatest hits tour, and everybody was amazed. But Bowie doing a greatest hits tour.
Yeah.
But he started to say, yeah, you know what? Heroes is a great song. I have to
Mm.
say, I've come back around to feeling that was good. And I mean, I'm not at all obviously comparing myself to the godlike genius of David Bowie, but I read back over one of the Artemis books and I was like, that's pretty funny. And why have I not gone back into that world for so long? And it's it's my world. So I'm at that point now where I'm really enjoying talking about the old books, touring the old books,
Yeah.
I'm actually doing a spin-off trilogy at the moment. So, but as you said, even when you're working on those subjects, it really has to be a special idea to get to the head of the pack. And I have these little tests. How do I know I'm on the right idea? And how I know is
Oh yeah.
if when I'm going to sleep at night, I usually am thinking about one of my ideas, and if that's the idea, if I'm thinking about the book I'm working on, then I'm writing the right book. And that's a little test that works for me, because and I know a lot of younger writers suffer from too many ideas, and they jump around and
Yeah.
from one to another, and they think, oh, I have a much better idea. I'm gonna do that now, and then you never finish the book you're working on. And that the most important thing is you just got to finish that draft. You just got to finish it, because if you don't finish it, you're just never going to finish anything. So I think for me, I still suffer from that, which idea to work on. And just before I drift off, if I'm dreaming about leprechauns, I know I'm on the right book.
So you've had Eoin Colfer the Berlin years, like Bowie went off to Berlin, didn't he, and didn't really know what he was
Yeah,
doing, and then he came
yeah,
back, and as you say, and I went to that greatest hits tour, and it was just phenomenal.
yeah. Me too. He did it in Dublin, and the night before he had been on Jonathan Ross. And he said something like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing Dublin tomorrow, and I don't think I'll play any of the hits." And we were like, "What?" We were so depressed, but still going. And then he opened up with I think it was either Heroes or Rebel Rebel, and
Yeah.
the collective sigh of relief. And that was the best concert I had seen until a couple of years ago. Andrew Donkin and I got tickets for Kate Bush, and that was just.
I went to that as well in London, and it was, yeah, I mean, I was right down the front. I could see her waiting to come on, and it was,
Oh wow.
there's that thing about that was the stage that she'd last ever appeared on, and she kind of walked
Yeah,
the wings like she'd been waiting there 20 years, and
yeah.
it wasn't perfect, but it was an event, and I think
No,
that's what we're
yeah.
missing
It's very
now.
emotional though. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
very
was,
emotional. Yeah,
but I
because
think that
we didn't think we'd ever see it. I think that
no,
was the
not
thing.
at all. No, it was amazing. But I think that just to continue on the sort of the Bowie side, I mean, in a way, you could continue to write Artemis Fowl books. In a way,
Yeah,
that would be like your greatest hits tour, because that.
yeah.
But do you kind of feel have you got more to prove now? Or
Yeah,
less? I mean, I'm interested in where you kind of see yourself, because you've got readers. That's what a writer wants.
yeah. It's a strange one. I vacillate between the 2 points of view, and
Yeah,
I think when I'm telling myself something very strenuously, then it's probably not true. So if I'm saying you don't have anything to prove to these people, then I probably feel I do.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I don't have any more illusions about being able that people who don't like what I do are going to suddenly go, you know what, I was wrong about that
yeah,
guy. He actually is, he can write. It's not that kind of world. So what I am saying to myself is you have to judge for yourself what your best idea is and what you're going to have the most fun writing, because I do think that my strength is to write books that are fun to read, and
Yeah.
and you can put all sorts of messages in there, and you can hide a lot of stuff in the fun. But I really enjoy it when I hit on a vein of fun in a story. I can the hours just fly past for me. So the last book I did, High Fire, which was a dragon book set in Louisiana. I don't even know. I've never been to Louisiana. I don't know any dragons.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know where that. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. Any of it. But I had so much fun writing it, and for me now, that's one of the tests. And I do see if I'm writing a passage and I find it boring, then if I find it boring to write it, then it's going to be 10 times more boring to read it. So I like to try and keep that fun meter up in the red, and that usually means that it's going to be a reasonably fun book to read. And I'm trying to stick to that and be true to that, and not try to look to my fellow, even in my own county in Wexford, where I'm from.
Yeah.
John Manville and Colin Tobin live there, and I know John and Colin, and I'm kind of not, the temptation is to say, well, let me write a rural, literature thing, and I've tried, I've started it, and then I just keep putting in asinine jokes, and I think this is not for me. What am I doing? I'm trying to force myself into, a square peg into a star-shaped hole, and it's just not going to work. I remember recently I was out and I met two really, both, I think, maybe both Booker, I'm not sure, but I know them well. They're lovely guys, and I made the mistake. It's my fault. I said, guys, what are you working on? And they said, well, we're actually thinking of doing a collaboration about the meaning of life as shown through, the eyes of a terminally ill patient. I said, oh, and then they said, what are you working on? I said, well, there's this farting dwarf. So I learned a very important lesson that day. Do not ask people what they're working on, or they're going to ask you.
Brilliant. Can we just let's go way back to the beginning? And I'm guessing that your emphasis on fun and wordplay, you were probably a pretty popular teacher. I think people enjoyed being taught by you. And did you enjoy that sense of performance every day? And although, let's say, it's bloody hard work being a teacher.
I did enjoy being a teacher. I tried to do a lot of things through storytelling and drama. It is hard work, and I don't think I was quite as easygoing maybe as I am now, because when you're teaching, you have to. I was never one of these teachers who wanted to be your friend as such. I wanted to be your teacher, but I was a firm believer in the arts, and I still am, and so I tried to do as much as I could in that. And I found that if you tell kids a story about Egypt and you include the pyramids, they're much more inclined to absorb that information than if you just read a dry historical text about the pyramids. So, and if you put on a play about the pyramids, and I find that to be really, really effective. Or if you make a model of the solar system, painting footballs as the planets, for me that really worked, and that came from my father, who was an educator from the 60s to the early 90s, and he was ahead of his time in that he refused to hit kids, and at that time in Ireland, until it was banned in the 80s, and I don't know what the year was in the UK, but hitting children was encouraged. It wasn't just a last resort. It was like the first line of defense, and you had teachers who would have special weapons that they would bring to school. And my dad, I remember, said to us all at the beginning of the year, he said, guys, do you want me to hit you? And we said, no, of course. And he said, well, I don't want to hit you. So let's see if we can get through the year with no violence. And he did that every year. But obviously there were kids who didn't respond to that because their home life probably was violence.
Right.
But I have heard, even as a teacher myself, and this is, I stopped teaching in 2000, so I would have been teaching from maybe 1986. And this, of course, corporal punishment was banned completely, but still there were people practicing it, and there were parents who would come in and say, "Oh, if he's giving you any trouble now, just give him a belt of the stick. We don't mind. That's what we do at home." So it was that young people now don't realize how far we've come in such a short time. And my dad was one of the, he was at the vanguard of that. So I learned a lot from him.
So while you were a teacher, clearly looking at the publication line of your books, you were stealing time away at weekends and holidays to write as well. And I think a lot of people's first books are written in kind of stolen, borrowed time, aren't they?
Yeah. The first book I had, as Vanessa mentioned, there was a book called Benny and Omar, and that was written while I was living in Tunisia with my wife Jackie, and we were teaching. And so I would take notes all the time. And then I always figured you had 2 months off, and if you really, really worked at it, you could write a book in 2 months. So, and that's what I did. And this was the sixth time I had done that, and the first five hadn't been published. But Benny and Omar, I think I finally stopped trying to be other people, and I stopped trying to be, C.S. Lewis and Clive King, some of my favorites, and just found a little bit of my own voice, and also it was a quite unusual setting, an Irish boy living in a little village in North Africa. So it got published. It got accepted very quickly by O'Brien Press in Ireland, who were a fantastic Irish publisher, and it went from there. And I was really lucky because there's a big show in Ireland called the Late Late Show, and
indeed
the biggest show we have is the Toy Show, the Late Late Toy Show. It's literally for the
legendary.
last 20 years, it's been the biggest single show on TV. And the guy at the time who was presenting, the presenter, Gay Byrne, they had like 4 books in a section, and somehow my book got on there, and the next day it was #1. So that's the power of the media. Now, I don't know if it still has the same power because there are so many channels, but that started my career. It was a real stroke of luck.
So what was that moment like when you got it was probably a letter from O'Brien Press saying we're accepting you for publication? Did that feel as a moment?
Oh, I still remember that. They actually called me, and I remember being in the kitchen. The phone was on the wall. I remember taking the call.
Yeah.
I remember just kind of agreeing, yes, that's great, and not really getting it until about 5 minutes after I had hung up. And that was a life-changing moment, because it's the validation there that what you've been doing isn't just a waste of anybody's time. That's really hard to get through when you're a young writer, is that especially if you're in a relationship or if you have a family, you're taking time away from that relationship or that family to do this project you're not getting paid for.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'd been doing it for like 14 years. So I started when I was 18. I didn't get published till I was 32. And so, my relationship with Jackie, and then of course, we had our first son. There was a lot of me going away into a room or putting on headphones and putting a plank on my knee and working in notebooks. And there must have been points when everybody was thinking, well, he's lovely and it's great what he's doing, but he's wasting his time.
Yeah.
I really, or even worse is the kind of the patronizing, aren't you great now to be writing a book? You're a great fella. And you can't help but be affected by that. And I think I was definitely coming to the end of my tether as regards what I was expecting of myself. I really thought, I didn't know how many books more I could write without getting accepted by someone.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays people write one book, and if it doesn't get accepted, no, I shouldn't generalize, but a lot of people would put it straight onto Amazon or whatever. And I think self-publishing can be very good, but you need to work at it. You don't just throw up your manuscript. You have to get on those rounds of interviews, and you have to get on those sites.
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends who've done it really well, but then I have a couple more friends who've just kind of released it into the wild. And then if that happens, I don't think that works particularly well.
I just want to, you said everything you're saying is fascinating, and I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people out there who want to write. But you talked about the first books that didn't get published. You were trying to be somebody else, and I think that's something a lot of people struggle with, finding a voice. And it sounds like you realize what. I mean, if you looked back at those books now, is there anything in there that you think is salvageable? Could you imagine?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, nothing is wasted. I always say nothing is wasted because you learn from it. And there's a lot of things I wouldn't do now because I wrote those first 5 books and I learned what does and doesn't work. For example, the first book I ever wrote, and you'll probably guess which franchise I was a fan of at the time. It was like a boy who was raised not in the jungle, but in the forest, not by the apes, but by the wolves. So like it was very close. And I still remember that, and I even drew the cover myself. I thought I'm like a double threat. I remember you had to print it out in those days, and I don't know if you remember the rotary printers we had to tear off.
Yeah, you tear them off.
Yeah, so I had to tear off like 100 pages of those, and it was a lot of work then to send them into the publisher.
Expensive.
I was convinced. Yeah, but when you're young, you kind of think you go between thinking you're a genius to you're terrible, but with this book, I really managed to hold on to the genius feeling for a long time, and I must have submitted to about 30 people and got no acceptance, obviously, but some very kind notes, which really helped. But the thing with notes is it depends where they come from, and part of your development as a writer is to have some level of confidence to know what is a good note and what isn't. And I still am not 100% sure a lot of the time, but sometimes I bowed to notes in the early days that in retrospect were completely wrong. And one of those things is when people tell you this is not what the market is looking for. Which I heard a lot in the early days. You really have to be careful about following that religiously, because it's very hard to anticipate what the market is looking for. And obviously, there's a middle ground where you can go that the market is always kind of looking for, but it's the outliers that usually become the phenomenon. So it's a thing that nobody is expecting. Like the next phenomenon is never the same as the last phenomenon. I mean, I'm not one of those phenomenon, but I'm kind of, I'm doing pretty all right. But I tend to just write the kind of thing that I enjoy writing now. So I remember when I wrote the first Artemis Fowl book, for example, a movie executive said to me, well, we're going to start making it next week or next month. And that was 20 odd years ago. He said, what is difficult for us is when the fairy characters and the human characters are together. And when they're separate, that's great. We can make that work. But when they come together, the special effects weren't quite there yet. And I really thought about that, and I let that bleed into the next book. So I tried to keep the characters apart. And it just occurred to me after I'd written that book, oh my goodness, I have changed the plot of this book because of something a movie executive said that has nothing to do with books. And that was a real lesson to me. So once you're in that room, once you're writing the book, stay in the room. Don't kind of let your mind go off to what people might be expecting or what might work for some other medium. Yeah. Because that is not how to write a book. You have to, I mean, I think a lot of people possibly have the screenplay in mind when they're writing a book. And sometimes I do, but I really, really try hard not to let any other influences come into the office, if you like. Just keep it. The story is king, and the story and the characters for me once I start working on a project.
But I mean, of course, you've developed Artemis as a video game as well, haven't you? a while back.
Yeah, someone, I forget who did that. I think it was Game Boy or
Yeah,
DS. It was DS, and but it was a very. I like that game because it was more of a video book, so you could read it and then click on links and go off to little sub games. That was nice. Again, I didn't have a lot to do with that. It was very experimental at the time. I think it was
yeah,
nearly 15 years ago. But yeah, and there's all sorts, and then again, there's all sorts of games on the internet, Artemis games that are, I don't know where they come from. But yeah, they're fun. I mean, I'm a big fan of fan fiction of all sorts, whether it's music inspired by or games
yeah,
inspired by. I think all of that is great. I can't really read a lot of it because there's been some problems with people uh, saying that writers were inspired by the fan
yeah.
fiction. So you have to be kind of careful about that. But I think it's a great step towards being a writer.
Mm,
Um, it gives you a nice grasp of how to mold and shape a character before you
yeah,
take that step onto your own characters. So I think it's very useful if you're a teenager, for example, um, and you want to move on to writing your own book,
yeah.
and you're a little bit scared by the prospect. Yeah, I think it's nice.
So you've talked about characters, and I think clearly it's a testament to the strength of the characters you built that people feel they want to go off and create their own versions of narratives featuring them. But I'd love. Can you just kind of take us into the writer's room? You're sitting there. I imagine you haven't got a plank on your knee. You've probably got I'm guessing you've got some amazing high tech now with all kind of gadgets that have yet to be invented, sort of pinging all over it. But
It's
uh,
yeah.
what do you do? Do you how do you plot? Do you storyboard everything, or do you just write?
I do. I don't do the physical storyboard. I do a lot of notes though, and I do plan, and that is from bitter experience because a few times I've started up books and I just haven't. There hasn't been enough there, so I've spent months working on something, trusting that my train of thought will carry me through. But sometimes that train goes off the rails, and you're left with the. I won't say wasted because nothing is wasted, but certainly your time could have been probably better spent. So I do tend to do a plan. Now, the plan is like a safety net for me in that I go wildly off plan and things can change very quickly. You can be researching something and realize, oh my goodness, that's the end of the book. Fantastic. And it can switch like that. My office is very nice. It's kind of a little spacey. You can see it there actually. It's a little, I suppose it looks very spacey out in the garden there. I don't know if you can see that pod
Oh
down
yeah,
the back of the garden. It is quite, it's lovely, and I'm very lucky. And that is the first time I've had something like that. I've always wanted to have my own little office, so I can go out there and nobody comes near me. The light is better in here, which is why I'm doing this from
yeah.
here. But it does have, as I like to call it, an ideas sofa where I can lie on the sofa and have ideas. And people think I'm asleep, but it's
No, you're not
actually.
asleep. No,
But no, I love it, and I think it's a bit of a man cave, okay. And I mean, I have a Flash Gordon poster on the wall, and a David Bowie icon painting by Tony Di Terlizzi. So
right.
it really is, and I can listen to Rush and people that I possibly wouldn't listen to indoors. And I have a little not an altar to myself, but I do have all my books lined up, some of them, which is very nice. So I go out there every day. In the morning, pre-COVID, I would go to, there's a cafe locally, which is quite a big cafe, and they always have plenty of tables, and it's a great cafe called Cinnamon. So I go down there usually for 2 or 3 hours, and
Yeah,
that's where I do all my planning, email, uh, uh, and then I come back up to my office in the afternoon, and that's where I do the actual work. But you gotta, I still work every day, 7 days a week, for various amounts of time. But I find that I love my work, so I'm always trying to find more time. work, and I don't know how healthy that is. I probably need to get an interest or two. But I do at the moment. With the lockdown, I wouldn't have any travel, and I would have enough time to work. But I'm still looking for more time, so I'll have to stop sleeping. I think it'll probably.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Do you measure a good day by how many hours you've spent in the man cave, or how many words you've got on the paper?
Usually, I would measure. I don't measure, I suppose, but I know I feel very good if I've had a little idea, and it's just a small idea that propels the story in an interesting way. I mean, I know I have to get the character from A to B, but it's how you get them there. And if I have an idea that's just a little bit quirky and it's a little bit interesting, or if I find a way to drop in some exposition without being preachy, I'm very happy about that. So it's a collection of, every book is 500 tiny ideas with one overarching, I suppose, major idea. So yeah, I like, it's that little idea. If I can have the day's idea, that's like a live idea, not one that I'm going to use down the road. But if I have an idea that is useful in the next paragraph, that makes me very. I don't measure it anymore by words. I used to have to get my 1,000 to 2,000 words done, but now really, I just read back over the page, and am I happy with that page? And if I am, then I'll come in happy.
So do you start the day by rereading what you've done yesterday and re-editing that, or you do?
Yeah, I do every day. I go back a little bit and see if it holds up, because very often it doesn't. I don't mind that. That used to really annoy me too, but I don't mind that anymore, because that's part of the job. You just go back and you think, you know what, that whole chapter is not working. I don't delete them anymore. I have a separate file for stuff that hasn't worked, and I will pop it in there.
Okay.
And it's amazing how often it actually, your subconscious plays with that jigsaw, and eventually you'll find a spot for it. Maybe not even in this book, maybe not even in this series. I have definitely used, like, for example, at one point, there was a suggestion that I do a Peter Pan kind of sequel.
Oh yeah.
And I had actually written the first chapter, and it didn't work out, and I ended up using that chapter with some name changes in an Artemis Fowl book. So it was, nothing is wasted. I know I've said that a few times, but I really do believe it. So you can literally reuse it, or you can use it as a cautionary tale. Don't ever do that again. So one way or the other, you'll find a place for it.
So there may be books in kind of the 5th Artemis Fowl book that you cut from the second one during an editing process. Do you kind of move things around?
And another time I wanted to take a break from Artemis Fowl, so I started this book about Little Demon. And after about 30,000 words, I realized this is just a character in an Artemis Fowl story. What am I trying to do here? And so I went back and rewrote it, and it was fantastic actually, because it put me really ahead of my schedule for the Artemis Fowl books. So it cheered me up immensely for several weeks. But you just don't know. I'm a firm believer that your subconscious or unconscious, whichever, is fermenting these ideas. And so often you say, I don't know where that came from, but actually, if you really think about it, you've been working on it for months while you're asleep or while you're relaxing or whatever. So you'll have this epiphany one day. Oh my goodness, I know where that fits. And very often, you will find a place or a way to join two scenes together that you thought were unrelated. So, but like someone said, I get all you get all these ideas when you're working. I do anyway, or mostly. Nothing really happens if you're sitting looking out the window. Not for me. I know a lot of people do get a lot of inspiration from nature, or from staring lovely at their pets. But for me, I have to be at my desk working, and that's when I get the most inspiration. Not necessarily on the project I'm working on, but it's just that muscle is engaged, I suppose.
You've said in a couple of interviews that most of your characters are based on real people, and I think you also said that you said my wife warned me. She told me about 10 years ago, anything I ever say or do, nothing is to go into one of your stupid books. I think that's a great quote.
Yeah, I may have added in the stupid just to make it a better quote. But she told me, she did say, what we do is, private. I don't want to be in the books. I mean, I kind of, in the later Artemis Fowl books, the mother character, Angeline, there would be a little of Jackie in there, but it would be broad strokes. So nothing we do or as a couple, or that she says to me in private. I mean, I plunder my two boys there. God love them, but Jackie is sacrosanct. I think that's a condition of our continued happiness.
No, I think
which I'm happy to stick to.
Good.
How do everyone else is fair game.
So when you build a character, I mean, I think you've actually done this, haven't you, in another book? I'm going to say, do you kind of interview your characters? I mean, do you know everything about a character before you start writing anything about them? Is that the kind of, or do you discover about them as you're writing?
It's a little bit of both. I try to note down as many of their characteristics as I can. And I realize that the readers want to know about these characters, but they don't want to know in a kind of laborious research fashion. So you have to sprinkle it in as you go. Obviously, it's inevitable that you will have ideas while you're writing, and then that would mean you got to go back and rejig the character sketches that you've done before. But for me, what is different about this character? Why is this character worth writing about? So, and the more I do in that field, I mean, I've done 40 something books now. I do find it tougher to come up with a reason why this character is worth writing about, and so that's why I try and base it on real people, because they help me with the voice. I don't ask myself what would I say. I ask myself what would my friend say in this situation, and it makes it a lot easier to distinguish between the characters if you have real life subjects to base them on.
So your brothers have been an influence, have they, on your writing?
They have. I have 4 brothers, and I suppose we were quite boisterous when we were young, and they have quite distinctive personalities, each of them. So I've been able to use them. I suppose most notably my brother Donal, who was very mischievous as a boy. He became Artemis. So now obviously that's a base character, and then you build upon that. You make him a criminal mastermind or what have you. But definitely my brothers, my parents, my friends, my sons now, they've kind of taken over. Everybody there's a bit, and then of course there's a lot of splices and hybrids where you take the appearance of one person and you give them the personality of another person, and then the dialect of a third person. So it's very rare that would be a single influence. It would be a lot of different people. So and I'm lucky, I suppose, that as a teacher as well, you meet a lot of children, and you could use little bits of them. More directly, you can use actual one-liners that they would shout up at you from the back of the class. And I used to be very challenged by that, if kids were standing up to me and giving me cheek, as they would say. But after, when I started writing books, I would go, oh, instead of trying to answer them back, I would say, that's very good, thank you, keep them coming. So it was, I think, ironically, that kind of diffused them. They made them a little wary about that. But most kids will really rise to that challenge. I had a rule in class, and at home too, it became a rule. And I'd said to my students, okay, if you're in trouble, and so long as no one is hurt, if you're in trouble and you make me laugh, you are no longer in trouble. And that went wrong a few times.
I bet.
But in general, it worked really well. And kids would ask me, am I in trouble? And then they would do a little moonwalk or whatever and try and get out of trouble. And that made for, some funny situations. And my older son Finn, he was a master of that. He's only been in trouble about 3 times because every time he just pops out a one-liner, and I laugh, and my wife will say, "Don't laugh," and I laugh, and he's out, and he's like, as soon as he's out, he kind of backward walk. I forget what that dance is, but he just shuffles out of the room, and he, free as a bird. So I think that was probably the best rule that I ever made as a teacher and a parent.
Great. Well, maybe you need to go into politics and solve a few world problems with making people laugh. It'd be
oh god,
a bit of a challenge, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I get Finn. I get my son get him on the case. He'll do it.
Clearly, you're not just building characters in your books, and what anyone who's read any of your books will realize, you're building worlds as well, and you're also having to kind of invent technology that doesn't exist to move plots forward. And I think you kind of invented the iPhone, didn't you, really, before Steve Jobs did? I mean, clearly, I hope you got a royalty on that,
I do like to take credit for that, but I think if I'm honest, it was probably Douglas Adams got there before me with the Hitchhiker's Guide. That was closer, but I did have a thing in the third Artemis book, which was called a C cube, and it was incredibly like the iPhone, but I think the iPhone was already on the way. I probably read about the advances that were being made in technology. And what I like to do is I like to read. The Guardian especially has very good technology articles, and then just try and extrapolate. If they can do this now, what will they be able to do in 50 years in this specific area? Or what are they trying to do now and haven't quite managed? And I would take that. So often by the time my books get to publication, they've solved that problem. And certainly everything I've invented in the Artemis Fowl books, or I won't say invented because I don't actually have working models, but anything I've theorized about has already been done. I think time is the only one that they haven't managed. But there's so much theoretical literature on time travel from people like Einstein that you can make it sound like it could work. And that's very important when you're writing for young people, I think, is to make it sound plausible, because they're very skeptical. And unless you just say, well, it's magic. If it's science, it has to sound like it can work. And so they read it and they go, okay, I'm prepared to buy that for this book. So I like my technology to sound as though it could possibly work, even though it probably couldn't really.
But I mean, in a way, that's one of the responsibilities of a writer, isn't it? That you're creating a world, a set of characters and technology, and everything has got to, if it's successful, you've got to feel as a reader that this is a real place and these are real people and these things actually work. If it feels like you're reading a book, you kind of fail, don't you?
Yeah, you want people to forget that they're reading. And when I'm reading the best book or watching the best theater, I kind of forget I'm very much the typical writer in that when I'm at a play, all I'm thinking is, well, that's not how I would have done that, or, I definitely wouldn't have cast that guy, or I don't like that set. But when I totally forget, if I'm going, for example, one of the best examples of that, I think, was the musical Matilda. When I was at Matilda, I went in there thinking, well, this is about a kid's book, that's my area. And I was just blown away. And I remember coming out and thinking, oh yes, I was in a theater, and that is the best. That's the best result. And I'm trying to get that result as a writer. I want the kids I love it when they get that look in their face, and you can tell they're in the book. They're there standing beside Holly Short or Artemis Fowl, and that's a thing that is usually confined to young people, because that membrane between the imagination and reality is so thin that they can pop through it for a couple of hours every night, and that's a beautiful thing if you can achieve that. And it's one of the joys of working in children's literature, is that you can send these kids off on a journey for an hour before bed or whatever. And that's what we're always trying to do.
You talked earlier on about the 5 books you wrote, or 4 or 5 books, that you were trying to be someone else. You weren't allowing your own voice. Clearly, you have worked on some really interesting projects. I'm thinking of the Iron Man book you did, and also obviously the sequel to Hitchhikers. Is that a that I wouldn't go as far as saying that was fan fiction you were writing.
No, it really was,
it?
especially with Hitchhikers, because I know they kind of marketed that as the official ending of the. Oh, sorry, the bell's ringing there. Just ignore it. The official ending of the series, but to me, it was kind of celebrity fan fiction, if you like, and I was hoping that that would be an ongoing thing where someone would do it every 5 years, and I thought that might have been the case, but it was a double-edged sword, that particular one, because it's such. Oh, I'm going to bring you out to the door. A little walk. It's celebrity fan fiction, that one, because. Because it's such a holy grail Hitchhiker. I don't know if I should have touched that at all.
This could be the beginning of a thriller. Man on the door during a Zoom.
Sorry? I am usually. Anytime, yeah. Sorry. Thanks. No problem. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm just.
Don't worry.
Wasn't taking no for an answer. So yeah, that was a really holy grail for me, and it was my favorite thing. And they asked me to do it, and initially I thought, no, I wouldn't do that. But then I started having ideas. So when they came back to me the second time, I said, you know what, I will do it. And then from that day on, I started to worry, and because I was such a huge and remain. I mean, to me, Douglas Adams, he's like my Beatles, you know.
Yeah.
He was the guy who when I read Douglas Adams before that, I love fantasy books, but I kind of thought that they all had to be very worthy and everybody had to have a destiny. But then I read Douglas Adams, and I realized, oh my goodness, it was like a license to be yourself, and I loved him, and so to do that book I found quite intimidating. I mean, I think I'm glad I did it, but I wouldn't 100% say I was delighted. Whereas Iron Man, that was just a blast.
Yeah.
I remember having a meeting with Marvel, and they were saying, okay, now, you know, because of the movies, now your Iron Man cannot be based on Robert Downey Jr. And I was going, yeah, that he is not based at all on Robert. And they were like, no, we mean it. It's not to be based on Robert Downey Jr. And I said, I also mean that. It's not. And it's completely Robert Downey Jr. So that was a different thing. I think Iron Man is fantastic, but it's not what I would see as, to me, sacred. And I think The Hitchhiker's Guide is one of those things. Maybe Fawlty Towers would be another thing.
Yeah.
And Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Kate Bush. These are all my inspirations. And so to be involved as one is amazing. To be asked to do that, but also it's very intimidating. But the other ones I've done they're also exercises to me. I got asked to do a Doctor Who novella.
Yeah.
And I had never seen Doctor Who, and I still really haven't. But I thought it would be interesting as an exercise to see if I could write a Doctor Who novella from passing knowledge, from walking past the television while it was on. And it turns out it's not possible because one of my friends I have this friend who's very funny, and Declan Dempsey is his name, and he would read my books, and he said to me, and it was the best criticism ever. He said, that Doctor, and he's a Doctor Who fan, so he said, that Doctor Who book you did? And I said, yeah. He said, that was the best Star Trek book I ever read.
Brilliant.
So you understand completely what that means, and I understood what it meant, that I had, it was a great adventure story, but I completely missed the essence of Doctor Who, and he was utterly right. But so that if there was one book I would apologize for, it would probably be that one. And that was such a prestigious book, and I was the first guy out of the gate, and Neil Gaiman finished it. I was like, oh no, I really should have put more study into that one. I mean, if even thinking about it now, I had the first Doctor involved in a machete fight, I believe.
Wow. But I mean, I
It
think
was so off base. But
I mean,
anyway, it's still fun.
you've written 40 books. You've only got one to apologize for. I think that's pretty good. I mean, to be honest, I think a lot of writers need to apologize more for.
I probably have more to apologize for, but that's if I looked into it. But yeah, that's the one that's like stands out. I mean, yeah, I could spend the whole interview talking about that.
But are there other kind of projects like that you would, you would welcome if the door rang and it clearly wasn't the postman, but it was somebody saying, "Would you like to write Star Trek, for instance, or whatever"? Are there other things?
There are other things. I mean, I still really adore Captain Hook. As a character, I think he's possibly the best bad guy. So if there was anything Captain Hook related, I'd still think about that. I'd said to myself after the Iron Man, like, enough's enough. You don't want to just be the series continuer for hire.
No.
But there's probably a few that I'm fans of. And I mean, I'd love to work with people. Philip Ardagh, who's a big fan of, he got to work with Paul McCartney.
I've done that, right?
Yeah, so that kind of collaboration, I think, would be nice. Like, go back to Kate Bush if she wanted to do a book based on one of her fairy characters. Great. She wouldn't even have to finish the sentence. She would just say, "Do you want it?" And I would say yes. So, or if Bono wanted to do something, I mean, stuff like that has come up that I haven't done because I felt the idea wasn't there. There was not. It was, and some quite high profile stuff has come up, but. Yeah, definitely. I'm open to collaboration, and I mean James Bond. I'm a big James Bond fan.
Yes.
So I kind of have my James Bond idea ready. If they ever run out of very high profile writers and they go down to, upper medium, I would definitely do that one because I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I have a good idea, so I might do that. But at the moment, I'm trying to do theater. I have managed to get the rights to a lot of the glam rock songs. So people like, I have some T-Rex, some Slade, some Sweet. So I've crafted a jukebox musical around those, and I think it's really funny, and Susie Quattro as well. So, but that was supposed to be 2021, but I think it'll probably be 22 now with the way things are going. But I love theatre because the reaction is so immediate, and the collaboration, and I have a team that I love working with. So, I'd like to do something like that. But if any of the Fleming estate are watching, you're going to want to hear this idea. So please give Sophie Hicks a call.
Yeah, we'll make sure they get a link.
Yeah.
So is your man cave soundproof? Because I'm imagining you're in there playing Led Zepp really loudly. Are you?
I'm not that. It is on, but like a lot of writers, I find that if there's too many lyrics, it interferes with your train of thought. So I tend to put on, the Bowie, the Low album, that kind of thing. Yeah. A lot of Pink Floyd is mostly guitar solos now. The last couple of albums is very, very lengthy. Dave Gilmour playing his guitar, so I put that on. And I like movie soundtracks. There's some amazing movie soundtracks. My favorite is still the Bram Stoker's Dracula one, Francis Ford Coppola. So I know a lot. I don't know about you, Sam, but I listen to a lot of soundtracks, especially, and you can actually tailor them. So if you're going to write quite an interesting adventure scene, you can throw on one of the early James Bonds, or if it's quite emotional, you can put on The Mission. So it's good. But I do have a very nice speaker out there that just fills up that little office. And I have a big orange keyring, and when that keyring is in the door, nobody comes near me. Also, probably because the whole shed is vibrating with music, and nobody likes my music except me. So,
and are you able to leave the books behind when you walk up the garden path? I mean, if you're writing an Artemis book, are you in a particular frame of mind that you're having to shed it like clothes before you get back into real life?
It takes me a while. and I'm not always successful at doing that. I mean, this is how I walk around, like this.
Yeah.
Like everywhere I go, I'm like this, and you can see my jacket and my computer are coordinated. I mean,
Very good, that. Yeah.
that's just for you guys. So
Yeah.
and when I go to bed, I get into bed like this, and my computer goes on the locker. So and very often I would have an idea just before I go sleep. And I've discovered recently, I've made myself go out for walks, and that really I've found stimulates the brain. And now I've realized that you can email yourself voice notes. So I'm doing a lot of. Unfortunately, my Wexford accent is sometimes lost in translation, and I'm reading this now. Go, what does this mean? But it's a great way to, when you get the brain cells going and the blood pumping, you often have just a little tiny idea. And so I just pop up the email, send a voice note, translate it into text, send it off. And it's just a nice way not to forget. Nothing frustrates me more than having a tiny idea, which is maybe I think quite good. And then you get home and all you can remember is I had a tiny, quite good idea, but I don't know what that was. So, and that happens more as you get older. So look out for that one in about 20 years.
Well, it's great you're using technology now that didn't exist when you started as a writer, and it's enabling something.
Well, apparently I actually invented it. So there you go.
Absolutely fantastic. It's fascinating. You've actually been through, you've managed to answer a lot of the questions as you were talking that were coming through, but just to let you know that we've got a guy called Will who's tuned in, who in fact is an archaeologist and writing fantasy too, and he says that he was able to read and write your fairy language when you invented the fairy, and he was completely fluent.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm well done, Will. I was less than fluent myself. And anytime I opened fan mail, I was just praying for English, because if it was in the fairy code, it would take me like an hour to decode it. And but I appreciate it because the work that goes into those little pictograms is fantastic. So good man, Will, and he's probably reading a lot more pictograms now if he's an archaeologist. So yeah.
That's fascinating. And then lots of questions about how you developed Artemis, but I think you definitely covered that in how you develop character and you using different people. And yeah, everybody's just fascinated in your process. How long does it take you to write a first draft?
Usually about 8 months. If I'm doing a picture book, it's often quite, it could be as little as a week or two, but it would have been mulling it around in my head for up to a year. And I tend to, when I go on tour, I tell stories and I tend to test out things, and it's like an editing process. So by the time I go to write these picture books, they're almost perfect, well, as perfect as I can make them. That's how I did I did a book of PJ Lynch, The Dog Who Lost His Bark, and I've been telling this story for a couple of years, and I just trimmed it down so much. It's a great way to edit, but I would say 8 months for a first draft. I usually would end up doing one major rewrite, and then after that it's smaller things. So the last 10 or 11 books have been one kind of what you would call a rewrite, and then after that it's a lot of housekeeping.
It's absolutely fascinating. This has been the most amazing hour. I feel transfixed. I think really you two should go and have lunch, because you've got, when we turn off now in a second, you can talk about Bowie, and Simon comes from a theatre background too, so he'd be very interested in your musical as well. So you've got lots in common. So I think we're going to have to, I hate to say it, and it will shoot me dead, but
I thank you for your generosity, because that's been, it's just been the most absorbing, wonderful hour. And
no, I've had a lovely time. We must meet up in.
Enjoyable.
We must meet up in person. Are you in London, Simon? Are you in London?
I am in London, yeah. But when it's legal, we can meet. But at the moment, it's legal for us to meet. Isn't it?
I know, it's crazy. It's a sad time, and I mean, I think I feel sorry for the teenagers. People like my son Sean, who, when I was 17, I met my wife. I had that summer, and they're not having that summer. When you're 16, 17, 18, one of those summers, or all of them, is magical, and they're kind of not having that this year, and that has quite an impact on the rest of their lives, I think.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, let's hope it's over soon and the vaccine is invented. And everything else. So thank you very, very much indeed, Eoin Colfer. You just hang on
Thanks,
there.
guys.
Thank
Stay
you.
with us for a second, and while we tune out. Guys, the links are to the books are in the comments, and so we've got Fowl Twins coming out next week, and there's the first Fowl Twins book and the second one, which you now have to buy. I think they make the perfect package for the Christmas stocking, and there are an awful lot of people out there who would just adore to have them. So do your business there, and there are links to Easton's in the comments there. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm going to stop the recording, and we can say bye, and then we can chat for a few minutes afterwards. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you, Simon.
Okay, thank you.